All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about some dyno numbers here. We're going to talk about pure 600 versus stock turbo. I'm not going to have every scenario here. I'm going to have the scenarios that I feel are helpful and useful to people. We are going to then go over 91 E40. The first thing I want to talk about as we get into this, before I get too far, is virtual dyno accuracy. I did a video talking about self-tuning the car. I talked about going back and looking at some videos on YouTube of some shops that were tuning these cars and looking at their numbers off the shelf versus what I was able to get. Very accurate there, you know, within a couple of horsepower. Josh Bader Built Racing, did a video talking about this. I'm not sure if it's a separate video or if it's in one of his videos, but I do remember watching it, and it was within a couple of horsepower. Virtual Dyno versus, I believe it was Mustang Dyno, and it was, I believe, corrected to Dyno Jet numbers, right? The next thing is I use a smoothing of 5, which is what pretty much everybody else is going to use on these. Looks like it's right out of frame, and I've already tried to record this thing about 12 times, but as you can see there in the corner, it says smoothing 5. Okay. Um, the next thing is if we look at ambient pressure or barometric pressure, and we look at air temperature, right? So we look here at this one, for example. This is our pressure. Okay. You basically just go into Google and you look for PSI to inches of mercury or INHG conversions, and you put it in. So this converts to. And then intake air temperature here. So 93, been here, right? This is more of an average, right? From the highs to the lows to give you a more consistent number. Um, so, right, 93 is going to be the average. That's what was used there. Once again, if we go in here and look at these, let's just use this one right here, this 91 virtual dyno number here. It's just to show you. So this is 79. Let's say we remove 2 degrees. It's 407, 466, or 446. It's 1 horsepower, right? So it's not really anything to to worry about, but I do it for consistency because I find that I'm more happy with that. So we've talked about accuracy, setting it up, how I do it. Um, you're going to get some waviness in the dyno. Where did that one go? Okay, see here, we have a little bit of waviness here. And then when we get into some of the other ones, there'll be some waviness here. I didn't really want to show this yet, but if we look at this one, it's in 4th gear. We have some waviness here, but that is because this is the data points, right? This is your data points. It takes this information, it takes the data points, and then it will put them, it will plot them. That's how it determines it. It's basically how fast is the car accelerating over a period of time. That's why you need the weight. That's why you need the tire size. That's why you need the gear ratios. That way it can calculate that. It knows what it is. And then it says this is the amount of time it took to get the car from, let's say, 30 mile an hour to 70 mile an hour. And then it takes that time that it did it, and then it will then calculate horsepower off of that. So um, that's why it's important to know how this works. And then, I mean, just simply here, if we look at these, I'm just going to select. I'm trying to get something that has a little bit more information on it. Now let's just do boost. So if we look here at 5734, this is a data point, and then if we go back 56, but then we have one at 56, but then we have one at 54, and one at 53, and one at 52, and then right here we have one at 5,000, right? So we have almost 200 RPMs with nothing. So that's why it's only as good as the data that's being fed into it. And one thing I have ran into with doing multiple logs is at some point I'll get to a point where it'll freeze, and then it won't give me the data that I need. So either I won't get a virtual dyno run number at all, or I'll get one where it stops recording at 3,500. Let's say it says Second, 61 at 3,500, and then it doesn't show anything until 6,000, and that's, second 61 and a half or 61.6, and then it says, oh, it went 50 mile an hour in a half a second or what have you, and then it shows that you make a massive amount of power. So that's something else to think about. Check your logs. And this is something that anyone can do. Virtual Dyno is free. The only thing you have to do is when you get this data in here, you have to go into the file, and there's some data in the upper left-hand corner. It'll be cells like, I think it's A1 through 3 or A1 through 4, and you have to delete that out, so that way Virtual Dyno can read it. Otherwise, you'll just get an error and it won't load. So now that that's all, we've talked about all of that, we're going to talk about off the shelf, right? Stock for stock. So stock for stock, 91 octane and pure 600 versus stock turbo. This is where we're at. It makes more power up here. We lost a little bit right here. Okay, the blue is our number for the pure 600. It makes a little bit less here. It makes a little bit more up here, right? So that's where your horsepower difference is going to be. It's going to be due to the fact that it's making less boost here and it's able to carry boost up here more. Something to think about and something I want to show you. This is just a stock off-the-shelf tune. And if we talk about timing corrections, I think this is very, very important. This is not a dig at MHD. I don't want it to come off as a dig at MHD. I think their maps are fine. This is coming off as a fuel quality issue. I'm in Oklahoma. We are a state that has no ethanol in most of our fuels, so we have 91 with no ethanol. Ethanol can be very helpful in reducing knock and helping keep cylinder temperatures down a little bit, and I personally think that's where the issue lies with this. So this is just, like I said, a 91 octane off-the-shelf stage 2 tune from MHD, and we have timing corrections, 5.3, 4.5. We have timing corrections all the way across. And it's the same with the 91 octane off the shelf map for the Pure 600. I say off, it's not specific. This is just the same exact 91 octane stage 2 off the shelf map that you get in MHD that people run on stock turbo. This is just it being ran on a Pure 600. And I mean, we actually have a little bit less cylinder correction, timing correction in some of these spots, but over, except for right there, it's like 6 degrees. So we do have, we have timing correction. So something to think about when you're running this, if you're planning on trying to run it on an off-the-shelf map, let's say your factory turbo, is giving up the ghost and you're just looking to put something on the car, if you only have 91 octane available, be cognizant of what's happening. You might, especially if it's non-ethanol 91, you might need to run some octane booster or something to help prevent knock. If you're in an area that has 93 octane, and you want to mitigate this some, you can, run a 91 tune with 93 octane. So essentially all you're doing is you have a higher octane in the tank to help prevent some of this knock. Your results may vary. That's your choice. I'm no means responsible for what happens to your car. So on 91 octane, personally, I don't think I would run this turbo. And like I said, I don't think it's an issue with the turbo. I don't think it's an issue with MHD tuning. I think it's a fuel quality issue. I'm not going to go out and test this on 93 because I have one station that I trust that has 93. I'm not driving 20, 25, 30 minutes to it. I'll stay on 91. That's what most of the state has. When I go out in the mountains and drive the car, 91 is what's out there. So there's no sense on me making a tune or even reviewing 93 for that. So something to think about. Now, this was stage 2 stock turbo off the shelf. We'll look at the tuned versus tuned. So we have 455 and 561. I'm sorry, 516 torque on pure 691 octane final. and that is comparing that to the final tune on 91 octane on the stock turbo. So there is some gains there. It's about 30 horsepower and about 25 foot-pounds of torque. Um, I'm very limited once again to octane, so I am very cognizant of that. So you're gonna have some drop up top. I'm gonna have some timing pulled because the car does like to start seeing some knock around that 5,800 to 6,000 range on this fuel. So that's why it doesn't look as flat and as happy as the stock turbo. So something else to think about. I personally think that if you're going to run these cars 91 and 93 octane, there's no sense on pushing it without running methanol. Or if you want to run like E85, you can run E85. Or I guess E40, E30 blends, some type of ethanol blend. Okay, so there's that. And then we will look at, do I have that one pulled up? I don't think I have it. I don't pull up. So we won't talk about that one. It was going to be the methanol numbers on um, the stock turbo, but I don't. There's no need. So we're looking at pure 600 numbers. If you want to go back and look at what the car made on stock turbo, there's a video on that. So here we are, 91 octane with 70% methanol. We are at 535 and 551. Okay, a lot more mid-range. I mean, we're talking here 551 torque right at peak, and here it's 590 on the non methanol added map. Methanol's great, um, so that's one of the reasons why I enjoy running it, and I think that um, it's obviously what it's allowing us to do is we're allowed to run more boost, right? Because the cylinders are going to get hotter. The turbo is going to, as it compresses air, the air is going to get hot. And what's going to happen is with methanol, you can obviously run more boost, you can run more timing. It keeps the cylinder temperatures cool and it prevents detonation. So it allows you to do that, all of those things. So that right there is, I mean, we're very close in boost. It's a couple of PSI more. Obviously, there's timing changes in there. Um, but if you guys are saying, well, I want to put this turbo in the car, I want to make more power and more torque, but I don't have ethanol available, then cool, run 91 or run methanol. You know, this is with a 70% methanol blend, 70% methanol, 30% distilled water. You can buy the 50/50 stuff if you don't want to mix it or you don't have availability to buy it in bulk. You can buy the snow stuff. You can buy the stuff from VP Racing. Either one of those. I haven't tested running 50/50. I've only tested 70/30 in this car, and my wife's old car ran 100%. So something I would eventually like to test, but it's not super high on my priority list right now. Um, I've got other things I'm working on, but I think that this is a good test to show you kind of what to expect on methanol 91 versus just straight 91. And something else too I want to talk about is on these, I tend to run them a little bit richer in on the I mean really both maps, but especially pump fuels. And what that can lead to is running out of fuel system. You can run out of fuel system on the lower octanes. You don't have, you're not running it on ethanol, which requires more fuel, but you're running at a richer AFR, which kind of offsets not running ethanol. So something else to think about on this. So 516 torque on 91 octane with no methanol, 455 horse, 535 wheel horsepower, and 551 torque on 91 plus methanol. So that is 14 gallon per hour, I think it is, from snow. It's a 6 jet and an 8 jet. It's about 83 cc's a minute, I think is what I calculated out to. So a lot of methanol that I'm running on the car, but it has its perks. And when we get up here to the E40 numbers, I'll show you. So that'll conclude our Pure 600 91. If you guys have questions about the 91 stuff, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll be happy to ask or answer or talk, ramble about it. And I have been trying to talk about this in some of the Supra pages because there's not a lot of information on the Pure 91, and it seems like a lot of people are starting to get interested in that turbo. There's also the Dynamic Auto Works Hypercore, and then there is the Shunk, I think is how you pronounce it, S600. It's another supercore turbo like the Pure 600 and the Dynamic Auto Works Hypercore. I think wheel size is closer to the Hypercore than it is to the Pure, but it's also really inexpensive. I think it's like $900. So, and he's very open. It is a Chinese-made turbo. He's very open about that. So there's nothing to hide there. That's why it's cheaper. But something I think is really cool. He's working on some other stuff too that I'm interested in. I just kind of want to see what happens. See what happens with it. But just saying that if you don't want to run a Pure 600, there is I think it's the S600 by Shunk. I guess I don't know how you pronounce it. And then there's the Dynamic Auto Works Hypercore. So those are kind of your three turbos in that class. I think there's also the Vargas, if I remember correctly, but I knew nothing about the Vargas. If you Google Mark 5 Supra hybrid turbo sizes, there's a really good post about it on the Mark 5 forum that I think you guys, if you want to learn about it, you can read about. So next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to jump into Pure 600 E40 numbers. Now, I did not run an E40 off the shelf log. I did not. I was so excited with getting E40 in the car, and I wanted to tune this and push on the turbo that I didn't do it. Excuse me, something to drink here. So I didn't do it. Something I can do in the future if you guys are really that interested in it, but I'm honestly not. So we'll go here. We've got Pure 600 E40 final, and then we will compare this to E40 Revision 20, which was the final on stock turbo. Something else I'm going to also talk about is here, occupancy weight. Okay, this is 111 pounds heavier than this one. The reason is the car was having traction issues. This car is on a 285. It's a Advan Apex V601, I believe. It's like the numbers and everything on the turbo. I know it's a 285 wide and it's a Yokohama Advan. Yeah, it's a V601. It's a summer tire. It's like I think it's like a 260 or 280 treadwear tire, but it was having traction issues doing fourth gear pulls rather than by radials because I don't necessarily just want to go fast in a straight line. I want to enjoy the mountains and things. I added weight. I measured the weight and weighed everything before it went in the car. So if you see where it says 426, that's because it had 111 pounds in the back of the car to help with traction. And obviously it worked. So we've got 493, 584 on the stock turbo, 541, 541 on the Pure 600, both on E40. And you're probably wondering, well, why does it make less torque here and it makes more power here? It's very simple. Boost. So on the 600, it's 20 pounds versus on the stock turbo, we're running 22, 23 pounds, closer to 23. And this is to mitigate fueling issues. So we talked about running more fuel with ethanol, or running as much boost as you possibly can in that mid-range. What happens is you run out of fuel system, whether it be out of injector or pump. And to mitigate that without adding port or upgrading, you taper in the boost. So that's why the boost down, 3,000 to 5,000 is lower. And something else to think about is if you're racing these cars, or you're going to a drag strip and racing the car, you're doing a track event. While you're doing If you're doing like a track day, you might see some more of the lower RPM things. But if you're like dragging the car or you're doing roll racing, you're going to be up here with the way that you're going to shift the car anyway. So my thought is, if I'm gonna go to the drag strip, or I think it's Power Cruise where they do roll racing, which is really really super cool that I want to do. Um, you're doing roll racing there in this closed track environment. Then let's set it up where, okay, well, we're gonna be up here anyway, because if you shift at 6,500 and your RPMs come back 5,000, 5,500, you're still in this higher horsepower range than down here. It's not like you're going to shift this 6,000 RPM and you're going to drop all the way to 4. Just not how the car's geared. So something to think about. That's why this is set up this way. And this is basically, I'm running as much as I can, and I'm pushing the stock fuel system as much as I can with this. And you're running out of fuel pump, high pressure fuel pump down here if you're trying to run more boost, and you're running out of injector up here. And something to think about is your high pressure fuel pump is ran off the cam, so it's dependent on engine speed. So you're going to be able to produce more fuel right at 6,000 than you are at 3,000, right? In terms of it being linear, I'm not a math guy, right? So I couldn't tell you that how much it's going to produce at 3,000, how much it's going to produce at 6,000, if it's going to be directly linear to RPM, or if it's going to have some form of curve to it. So, but I can tell you that if I pull boost down here, up here, we're going to be okay with fuel. So, something to think about. Now, if we go and we compare stock turbo, stock turbo methanol versus E40 methanol, it's a lot more, way more. So on this map, this is a kill map. This is not I'm going to run this car at this boost level every single day. I mean, if we look at this E40 here, there's a lot less boost in the E40 map. But with methanol, this is not something that the car is going to see all the time. This is more of like a race map. Like I said, like a kill map where the car is basically just going to, it's not going to see this every day. It's not going to be something that I think you should beat on this turbo, because I don't think it's going to last if you try to run it at, I think it peaks at like 30 pounds or something. Let's see. Yeah, just over 30 pounds. So not something that you're going to want to necessarily do, but this is what the turbo can do. If you don't care about how long this turbo is going to last, and I'm sure if you do this and you blow this turbo up in 4 months, 5 months, and you try to send it back to Pure is going to be able to tell if you ever spun the turbo. I'm sure Pure is going to be able to tell if you've, how hard you've ran the turbo, so if you're going to do this, just know that you're probably going to reduce the life of the turbo, and you're also probably not going to have a warranty. And I think it would be really shady of someone to try to do this with a turbo, blow up the turbo, and then try to send it back to Pure and warranty it. So something to think about. I think if you're going to pay to play, it's like if you tune the car and you blow the car up, you shouldn't go back to the dealer and try to see if the warranty is going to cover it, right? Same thing with the turbo. So yes, looks like you can make 600 horsepower with this turbo. Yes, you made 623 torque, but it's not going to stay at that. It's just, you're beating it to death. So, like I said here, 497 to 610 torque. I think torque is something that can be understated. We're talking here 423, and where'd it go? Come on, give us 593. So 593 torque to 623. So it's a lot of torque. You're going to start running into issues, obviously, with traction at this level. You may run into issues with your transmission slipping. This was done also with XHP Stage 3. I did not have the additional line pressure bump on, but looking at wheel speed and comparing that to what the car should be. So, for example, if you take your tire size and your gear ratio, you can go online, and I think Spicer has it, and you can see what your speed should be at each RPM. You put in the RPM, and then that'll tell you, right? You can tell if it's slipping. So if it's like, you know, you're running 6,000 RPM, but you're only doing 40-mile-an-hour wheel speed in fourth gear, you're probably slipping the transmission, right? Um, that's something you can look at. The car pulls fine; it doesn't have any issue. Once again, traction is obviously the limiting factor at this point. I'm not going to launch the car at this level. I'm probably going to break axles. The car's got stock axles. I obviously am not going to get traction with these tires at this level either. Trying to launch it, so it's not something I'm going to do. But just to show you what can be done, comparing that to a stock turbo, this is where we're at. Okay, and then just to show you E40 versus methanol for anybody that wants to run that on the pure 600. What I would recommend and what I'm doing, and I don't have the log. I've tried to record this video about 5 or 6 times. I think when I said 12 earlier, that was honestly a little bit of an exaggeration. But 5 or 6 times, this video right now is 27 minutes long, so you can see how long I've been doing this, trying to get this recorded with interruptions and making sure that everything makes sense and I'm not rambling too much. But I'm not going to go and find that and then pull it up because I'm going to have to close these maps out, open new maps, pull all the data and put it in. And honestly, I'm brain dead right now. So I believe with the way that I have the map set up for methanol, it makes like 580, 590, and it's with a much lower boost level. I'm wanting to say maybe 20. I want to say it's like 27 pounds, maybe 28, versus like trying to push 30. And it's not going to hold 30. It's going to lose up here. It's going to start to fall off anyway. So something else to note. Um, it's you're essentially taking a hot side of a turbo that's the exact same size as the factory turbo. You're going to get some restriction. You're going to get back pressure. So it's not going to be able to breathe. You're going to have some type of, it's going to run out somewhere, whether it be the hot side or the cold side. So now, I did talk about methanol, right? And we'll talk about this one here. This is the E40 final, right? So let's see. We'll go charge air temp, right? And then we'll just look at boost. So we have 93 octane, or not 93 degrees air temp. 19 pounds up to about 25 pounds. And this right here is no methanol. So at 6,200, at 25 pounds, we have a 210 degree charge air temp, right? 224 here. Now, if we do the same thing, and let's look at boost, and then we look at charge air temp, and this is with methanol, right? We're going to have a spike here, right? 27 pounds because I think, yeah, so the turbo's starting to spool. So we do have a little bit of a spike right here, but we're at 146, and by the end of our run, we're at 169. And that's at 35 pounds of boost right there is what it says, but I think that's just due to the throttle was closing. Let's see. Yeah, because the way this does this. So at 6,700, it's 27 PSI. Yeah. Oh, it's right there. Yeah. So it's doing this right here because when I shifted the car at the end of this run, it closed the throttle and it spiked before it kind of bled it off. So let's just say here at 6,700, it's 27 or it's 161 degrees. And then we compare that to this one, boost, charge air temp. I don't know if we went that far with this one or not. We didn't. We stopped at 6,400 is when I let off. But I mean, you can see just the sheer difference. I mean, down here it's 128 degrees at 3,000 RPM at 14 psi, and we're at, let's see, 127, right? So this is going to be likely before the methanol even had a chance to start spraying, because the way that this was set up on this was it would start spraying at like 20 pounds. But you have to realize the pump has to turn on, it has to start spraying and build up enough pressure to overcome the charge pressure in the charge pipe. So, it starts to spray, comes on, and then starts to cool off, and then now we're spinning the crap out of the turbo. But I think that that's just something to show you guys. And even on like E40, if we look at boost and charge air temp, right? So this right here on E40 on the stock turbo, this was a way smaller jet. This was only running a 6 jet. So 163 up here to 126, right? So you also got to look at what the air temperature is, the inlet temp. I compared these because they were so close. They're like right there. So it's gonna obviously, if they're that close, then it's a much better apples to apples comparison, just to show you even on more boost that the methanol is actually helping. So thank you guys for listening to me ramble. This is something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy the tuning aspect. I really enjoy looking at the data and interpreting the data and seeing what we can do. I enjoy what I've done with methanol. So far, methanol has been amazing. It's been one of the coolest kind of mods that I've done to the car, like pun not intended. But the fact that we can run more boost, we can run more timing, we can push the car harder, and we have lower charge air temperatures with it. So something for you guys to think about if you're kind of on the fence about it. And I mean, even here, we look at the difference that we're able to do with the turbo with methanol versus no methanol, right? And the fact that the extra fueling helps us run more boost, it runs cooler. It's just overall really, really awesome. So, obviously the downside of this is it's something you have to keep an eye on. It's something you have to check. It's something that you're going to have to deal with on a daily basis. It's not something that you're necessarily just going to kind of set and forget, like you pump your fuel and you just drive your car. So it does require more work and more kind of maintenance, if you will, right? You're going to have to watch it, um, cleaning jets and things like that. But so we're out with that. I hope this answers your questions on the Pure 600s. I hope that I could at least be your help in some way, shape, or form in this, since there's not a lot of data on this turbo. Feel free to comment. The Instagram is linked with the page here. So if you just go to my YouTube page, I have a link to my Instagram there if you want to follow me on Instagram. But thank you guys so much for watching. I think I covered everything. I know I've been rambling here for almost 35 minutes. So I appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day. Enjoy it. And thank you.